All right. Hi, everyone. I am Hope McCutcheon. Wanted to welcome you to CE2 this morning. I know a couple of you guys show me if you can raise your virtual hand or your real hand if this is your first time attending CE2. Awesome. Very good. Well, glad to have you guys. You can always put in the chat how you heard about this event. That would be awesome. But we love this event, right? Maybe we're a little biased, but we're here every month because we really enjoy it and we feel like we get good feedback. This event has been going on since 2015. It started in the iLab actually, and we'll have a new home at whatever point that makes sense, which we'll probably be talking about over the next month or two with the board and some of the other organizations that are helping put this on, which I'll go ahead and tell you who those are. This event is co-hosted and put on by a number of organizations. It is put on by CBIC, which I'm a board member of, Charlottesville Business Innovation Council, as well as a couple of other great organizations that do a lot for the community, CIC, Community Investment Collaborative, the SBDC, the Central Virginia Small Business Development Center, and then also sponsored by the Batten Institute over at UVA. So we are very appreciative of everyone coming together for this event. And how it's structured is that we have 2 speakers every month. So this is a monthly event, the 3rd Tuesday of every month. The first speaker is an early stage company, an early stage entrepreneur, and they will share about their company specifically. And then they have an ask for the audience. And so this is a crowd participation type of event, which is why it's not in a webinar format. We keep it like this so it can be engaging. So we would love for you to help that entrepreneur with their question, solve their barrier to growth. And then the second speaker is a more seasoned entrepreneur, and we call that segment Crash and Learn. So you get to hear stories that you might not get to hear otherwise, with that entrepreneur just sharing about their journey, things that they've learned the hard way, if you will, and lessons learned. So, and then after that, we do some announcements. I'll describe that later. And then we have breakout rooms at the very end, which does simulate a networking event, the opportunity to go and chat with the speakers afterwards, shake a virtual hand, but we can do breakout rooms on Zoom. So you can go and chat with our 2 speakers. So that is the layout. And we can jump right in. Does anyone have any questions? Good to go. Pretty straightforward. So I wanted to start with introducing Sid and Alexis, and a little bit about Sid is that I know Sid went to school around here and has a personal training background. And I know he's done some training, also worked for an electric skateboarding company. And I think that might be part of what prompted him to start this company that he has now, but has a pretty cool, I want to say offering, that's not the right word, pretty cool product-based business. And I would love for him to share about it. So I want to give the floor to Sid Carpenter and Alexis.
Okay, hello, can everybody hear us clear?
Good morning.
Did I get your last name right? I did that off of memory just now. Carpenter?
Sid Carpenter, yes.
Got it. Yeah, okay, cool, yeah.
So, Alexis and I have worked together for almost 8 years now. We met at Piedmont. I was basically taking some classes to start my business in training and wanted to control that greater than handing all those duties over to someone else. And in the time she was prepping for the Marines, I'd had experience in training in MMA and so on and so forth, and was moving my training to military and police. And that's where we kind of just began this partnership. We did that for about 5 years, and it was greatly successful up until about, the riot. We were directly involved in training and that, and it kind of just sapped our business. It didn't break our spirits though. All that time in that, we were using prototypes in our training, things we had made ourselves to better the experience. So for about a year, we kind of were figuring out what to do to go back to the old way or find something new. And that's kind of when we abandoned service and moved to products. And then about 2020, we finally said, let's create our own thing. So I was at a point where I wanted to not put everything in one box. In case there was a fail, I would have multiple options, and that's what we did, which is what we're here today to discuss. I invested into electric bicycles, domestically made suspension straps, and percussion massage guns. Within the suspension straps, we had a huge product lineup with pull-up bands, and we also have an app that's developed, and we're finishing the final touches on that, and that will go hand in hand with the straps and the bands training. What we didn't foresee was the challenges, the pandemic, becoming an importer, dealing with Department of Homeland Security, all the things that come in when you're sourcing from China and foreign countries. I had to learn all of that. Alexis had her graphic design and some of the other things. It was basically so much for the two of us, but we've overcome most of that. But the challenges within have been sourcing, getting the products here, regulation. I made an e-bike order in June of last year. They arrived in Thanksgiving. They sat at port for 2 months, and then a tariff got slapped on it on December 31st at midnight, which added another 25% to expense. So we've had a lot of challenges in that, and now we're streamlining things and getting them moving better. But we've also kind of run out. The pandemic has greatly hurt us. So right now we have a product offering of electric bikes. We have a partnership with a nonprofit here in Charlottesville, Community Bikes. We have a corporate partnership as well with another bike parts retailer. And we have several manufacturers in China and moving to Taiwan. But what you're hearing electric bikes, you're hearing percussion massage guns, you're hearing suspension straps, all under the umbrella of Maverick Exchanges. And we have a few product lines that we can't get yet because we kind of money ran out with that to kind of offer all of that and to synchronize it with our Mad Straps training app. So now we're trying to make the most out of what we have, the stuff that we have in stock, which is we have 5 different models of electric bikes with one main one that we're going to try to move to shipping direct to consumer, but we also have interest locally in some of the shops as well. So that's kind of where we're at is, it's marrying all these things together, doing it properly so there's not this weird message and all these random products we're selling. We have specialization in all of them. The percussion massage gun was one I found that relieved great pain. I believed in it, and I see where the marketing curve is in it. And we're definitely not front runners in that, but that was one that kind of, and that's something I'd like to discuss today. The other challenges that have slowed us down have been getting up and running on Amazon has been a nightmare, and that finally got released last week. So most of this has just been from logistic to the difficulty of doing business over a laptop versus being able to fly or drive somewhere and do something in person. So most of those challenges, kind of normal, but we've also cut into cutting edge stuff to where a lot of people don't always understand where we're going with it and the adoption of where it's at in terms of people buying it and so on. So that's, basically summing it up. So that's pretty much where we're at with this is, it's just a lot, and, it was a fear in the beginning of putting all this into one product. And I saw the explosion of electric e-bikes. One of the big things was in February, Rad Bikes, who is basically primarily an e-bike company and a startup as well. They got 125 million in funding, which told us, hey, let's look at this closer. Lime got another 100-something million. And I said, well, goodness gracious, what can we do in Virginia while we're here? We've already did a successful business and we want to get something that's less involved in politics and things. And, e-bikes seem safe. Training seems safe, and everything we had geared towards before was all for, PT tests. We would help people, pass their physical tests every time in every service branch, FBI, military, cops, you name it, but what we're doing now, we don't have to worry about those things, but we're no longer a service so much as
we're kind of honing in on all of our previous experiences with that. I have a background in design and actually industrial design as well. So I kind of, with what we've done in the past, we kind of pulled that in, and we were able to kind of decide, okay, we know what works here, we know what works specific to these type of things. How do we create something that augments that but also could be open to a broader market? And so kind of Maverick Exchanges is that umbrella, among all of them, to be more of like a REI, outdoor sporting goods type of company. And we have the ability to add other, products to our greater product offering. So, we like the, versatility that we have right now. But just kind of trying to hone it in, and with the limited products at the moment, it's a little, people look at them and they're like, that's interesting, you only have this and this. It's like, yeah, we've had some challenges, kind of everybody's story at the moment, with the pandemic and stuff. But we definitely have learned some stuff with that in regards to importing and exporting, how that process works. So I think we're getting on the right track now.
No, that's about it. I know it's a lot, but that's where we're at. And we prototyped other things as well. It was a nightmare getting what we needed, and the e-bikes were one that we definitely got a win on. And we're just right now outfitting them with a few upgrades and running them through mechanics to make sure they're ready to go. The direct to consumer model shipping is outrageous until you've shipped X amount of hundreds or even thousands, then that becomes feasible. But at this stage, it's not. So that's where we're pushing local sales and so on. And then within a week or two, our first lineup will be completed and ready to go to the consumers. So, it's just been things we couldn't have predicted as challenges, which I guess is normal. But we're just trying to make the most out of Charlottesville to see what we can do here, because this place is growing for bicycles, and the infrastructure and the safety of it is a big thing, and it seems like people are paying attention to that in this area. So we want to jump on that and expand out. So
great. Well, thank you so much for sharing about Maverick Exchanges and your different products in the e-bike. What is your ask for? What did you want some guidance on?
Well, basically what we've just said, having this company where we can't bring all the products in due to cost right now. The pandemic ate a lot of capital up to where these other product lines we wanted to bring in, we just can't do right now because of MOQs. Every MOQ for some of these products is several $1,000s. So we order anything smaller, it erodes the profit. So we're kind of looking at, here we have percussion guns, we have e-bikes, we have domestically made suspension straps, because we also want to do what we can in the US. Obviously, electric bikes, that's almost impossible. However, we are in contact with a local manufacturer, but in Detroit, domestic, yeah. So it's just simplifying our message, getting it down to where I guess because we have a pitch deck, we have things that we can obviously show you that we've put thought into this, but we could certainly use a little bit more, I guess, oversight and
to make it concise.
The question that we had talked about, I know when we were prepping, and is this what you're wanting to know, is kind of going to market. You've got these 3 different products that could expand into a much larger kind of sports-based product offering, and they all do have that connection with athletics or sports right now, with the bike, the massage gun, and the bands. But you're trying to figure out, do you continue to focus on 3 different products and continue to expand that, or do you focus on one and go to market strong with it and then bring on the other? Is that what one of your questions is? Or had you already decided for?
Yeah, I would say that's about right. And the percussion massage gun kind of stands sort of out of it. It is for recovery and so on and so forth. But yeah, that's what we're trying to figure out, is just not having this message that's all over the place. And she was talking about REI and companies that kind of sell adventurous outdoor products, but we also have this electrical green movement with the e-bikes and all the benefits it comes with. So kind of marrying that all together is.
Yeah, and
Yes.
our tagline, sorry, just interject one thing. Our tagline is engage the Maverick, and to be a Maverick is to be a nonconformist, to be someone who's out there, you know, cutting edge, doing something different, innovator. And so kind of that whole idea in the, you know, outdoor sporting goods enthusiast realm of things, you know, like an REI, like a backcountry.com or any of those guys, you know, they don't just sell one thing. So that's kind of like where our thought process was going with this. It's just kind of connecting that better and making sure that our message, you know, is better understood to our potential market and, you know, customer base.
Okay, so some of your question too is messaging as
Yes.
well, it sounds like. So does anyone have any advice for Sid and Alexis as they are going to market with these 3 products? JD.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just a college student, but
You're good.
that to me, it's the like electric sports thing you're doing. So it'd be more like, I forget what the company name is right now, but it's that magazine that shows you all the cool new products and stuff like that. And so you guys are like bringing, you know, the high tech to sports would be kind of my guess. I know that leaves your bands out, but you know, that would be my best attempt at it.
Awesome. I like it.
I've got a suggestion, Hope.
Craig?
Sid and Alexis, thank you for sharing that. What I'm hearing, and I think you kind of a little bit hit the nail on the head with the REI explanation and the outdoor adventure. And I would encourage you to be guided by who your customer is, because it sounds like you're trying to unify a story around the kind of products. You must have some drive or motivation behind these products, and what is that? And who are you trying to serve, and why do they need to be served? And I think once you figure that out, your theme will be cohesive. And the Maverick is a good start. I mean, the idea, I see what you're saying, is that you're appealing to a person who wants to be on the cutting edge and wants to be on, you know, have these new products and bring them integrated into your life. So I would encourage you, if you haven't already, to start there. Like, really think about who your customer is and what you're doing for their life, and then build a story around that. And that will probably, it'll not only guide you, it'll probably help to determine which products you actually bring to market.
I just have a question. It's kind of tied into what Craig's saying. Who are the customers? Are you selling to consumers? Are you selling to other businesses? You know, I would think to create more brand awareness, it might be good to have alternate distribution networks. So I'm just thinking specifically about the bikes. And you mentioned earlier that you have partnerships locally. And I agree with you, Charlottesville is a biking and running town. But it almost seemed to me like maybe having more of a B2B focus, at least initially, might help you with your brand awareness. You just have more people will see this bike more often. And then I think Craig's question is really good. Who are the customers? You know, you might talk about their lifestyle, but specifically, can you narrow it down into you know, are they, you could probably get your demographic down that they're somewhere between 30 and 50 maybe, and they live in these particular areas, they have incomes of X, and then figure out how you want to market to them. I think it'd be really important for you to guys, and I don't know, you mentioned Amazon. I think you're going to have to be more proactive in your selling and less reactive like REI is, or like you get with Amazon or somebody like that. Specifically think about, you know, where do you want this, what's going to give you more awareness? Can you sell these to particular bike shops that you like? Are there expos that you can attend? Things like that. But it is interesting. I mean, I see more and more of these bicycles for sure. And the gun, the percussion gun, my question is kind of the same. I mean, do you want to sell this to physical therapists, hospital systems, or do you want to sell it to me who has got old sports injuries? And the answer is probably both. But how do you do both effectively?
Really great thoughts, Tim. And you guys are on mute too, Sid.
There you go.
Sorry. No, great. Thank you for, yes. And what you just said about the regular people's sports injuries and selling to, hospitals and physical therapy clinics and things, that's one we definitely, the timing of everything and the lag of getting stuff in here and then tariffs getting put on things at the last minute changed a lot of our projections. But aside from that, everything I'm hearing is helping. Definitely, these were the questions we needed to answer. So I appreciate everything we're hearing right now.
Awesome. Well, thank you. So, does anyone else have anything for Sid and Alexis?
Yeah, actually, Hope, real quick, Sid, have you, Alexis, have you guys, you mentioned importing and that sort of thing. Have you reached out to the state to get help in that? Like the VDP focuses mostly on exports, but they might be able to help you out on some of the import things, as far as putting you in touch with people with things. I came in about 10 minutes late, so I don't want to interject things that you may have already talked about. But
what's the VDP?
VDP is the Virginia Economic Development Partnership.
Oh, okay.
As far as that goes.
Okay.
They focus mostly on helping companies to export, but they might be able to help you out with imports and that sort of thing.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
With that. The other thing is I will say, it sounds like with your products, your target customers might be different. And I know with the startup and starting up and selling, having to major in 3 different things can be really difficult. And trying to get a laser focus on your main product is a job into itself, and trying to laser focus on 3 different things and 3 different customers and raising money for 3 different things can be really hard with things. And a couple other really quick things. On the electric bike, have you ran into Eric Pearson with Alpine Storage locally?
No, we haven't.
So his Alpine Storage, ALPINE storage, he has a basically it's a storage unit that stores electric bikes, well, bicycles in general, and they sell these storage units. Basically, they sell storage units with the idea that they get rented on a monthly basis at apartment buildings, office buildings, that sort of thing. But he might be a good guy for you to network, because he's really well connected in the bike industry. Okay. And they heavily market it as far as the concept of electric bikes go. And they actually also they may have some ideas for you with investors as far as that's concerned too, with things, with stuff, because he's a really nice guy, and he and I were one of my client or company that I work with, we're looking to maybe help them with making their next generation. We've talked about helping them with their next generation storage unit. Yeah.
And it's ALPE.
Oh no, you're right. Sorry. Thanks, Hope. I was looking at something old here.
I'm hearing a weird.
What's that?
I'm hearing a weird echo. Am I the only one that hears it? All right, I'm good. Sorry. It made me sound like a robot for a second. There you go. Peter?
Hope, this is Don. Oh,
Hi,
sorry,
Don.
Peter's raising his hand. Does Peter want to make a question?
No, he was just putting it in the link in chat. You're good, Don.
Sid and Alexis, this might be a little bit of a hard point, but I have two questions. If I'm a Maverick in today's world, do I want to buy an import or do I want something built in the United States? Is one question I would ask yourself. And I know how tough it is to build in the United States. I know how costly it is. But I think that's something you need to think about, of how, you know, just like last night I was listening to a company where it's all about the new generation wants things that are natural and organic, not some plastics and stuff they don't need. I think this movement of building by us is a big one. The second one is, I don't know if you've run a bit of a SWOT analysis, especially your percussion gun is what made me think. And do you really know, it's back to your customer, what is it your product is different on? Is it real, you know, especially when you're competing with a lot of things that already exist? I mean, probably everybody on here has had a percussion gun against them. What do you bring different to the party? And that's where maybe one of the things is made in the United States. But just two things that think really, really hard. What's different about you? And is it different enough to make people want to buy it? And if you're a Maverick, is one of those differences made in the good old USA? My 2 points.
Awesome. Don, or Sid and Alexis, if you don't mind putting your contact information in the chat, then people can get in touch with you with more ideas. And Sid and Alexis will be in a breakout room at the end too, if you have some more thoughts for them as this progresses. So I'm going to go ahead and switch gears, but thank you both so much for coming in and sharing about your company, and let us know how we can further support you as well. Hopefully these ideas were helpful.
Thank you so much.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah. All right. Well, I would like to go ahead and introduce Kirby Farrell, our Crash and Learn speaker. So a little bit about Kirby. He grew up in Ohio and went to Miami University in business administration, which is in Ohio, as I figured out. He was a rugby player growing up, played for a really long time, has lived all over the country, has lived in New York, has lived in DC, and came to Charlottesville because of many reasons, but his wife is a UVA alumni, and why not come back to Charlottesville, right? As so many people do. He started his first company in telecommunications consulting. After that, co-founded a firm providing network integration services for healthcare systems, and that healthcare space is really a space that he currently is in and continue to develop a lot of experience in. He sold that company, co-founded another one, providing broadband IP services for the DoD, and now Locus Health. And Locus Health is a tech company supporting healthcare services and has actually done very well. They have thrived in this environment, actually, and he has a lot of great stories as he's been along the entrepreneurial journey, things he's learned. He is married with 3 adult children, and I think, if I recall, one is still local. I don't remember, but yep. And they live on a couple hundred acres in Ivy. Fun fact, raise goats, pigs, chickens. So I'm sure he has many stories there as well. And just really excited to hear, and also how I knew about Locus Health. I knew about Kirby, and I have been trying to get him to speak for probably a year. And what's fun is that I had wanted to reach out to him, and I was at Greenberry's one day and just started chatting with the person beside me, and it turned out that individual worked for Kirby, and Kirby was about to walk in within an hour. So I stalked him and stayed on him until the timing worked out for him to share, which I think the timing's really great, again, because Locus is doing really well as well. And so I know he has a lot of great stories. So Kirby, would love to give you the floor to share for about 20, 25 minutes. And then you can hold your questions, but we will open it up for Q&A afterwards. So all you.
Great. Thanks, Hope. I started my timer here because I can talk for more than 20 minutes if someone doesn't get me under control. But yeah, glad to be here. And boy, having coffee at Greenberry's, there's some memory from the past of hopefully those days can start again soon. So yeah, I've been doing this stuff for a long time. I'm actually I'm the same age as Bill Gates and that as Steve Jobs would have been, and not that I'm anything like those guys, but I've sort of ridden the technology wave over the years that that they obviously were instrumental in creating. And so I got my start working for a small telecom consulting firm in 1980, a healthcare telecommunications consulting firm before there sort of was even such a thing. And back then, what that meant was that was one of the first Silicon Valley companies ever was a company called ROLM, ROLM, and they made computerized telephone systems, which at the time was a thing. And that was back in the old days when most businesses rented their telephone system from the telephone company. And actually, you didn't even have a system. It was just like if you had 100 telephones, literally 100 cables were pulled from the telephone company into your office. And what this company did was they focused on hospitals because hospitals have lots of telephones. And most hospitals back at the time, the person in charge of telecom was the chief operator. They still had chief operators back then. And so it was a great way to, so I got in on the ground floor of telecom. And, you know, back then for a long time, if you could spell telecommunications, you were, you know, pretty well set. And I worked for that company for a few years and traveled around the country, and we'd help these hospitals make decisions on their telephone system. You know, it was a multi-million-dollar decision, big decision for a healthcare system. And then all my buddies had moved to New York, so I ended up moving to New York and went to work for a big consulting firm called Coopers and Lybrand, which is really Price Waterhouse Coopers, I guess, still exists, that was the precursor to that. And worked in their telecom consulting division and ended up running a big project for Georgetown University down in DC. And I can use their name now. It was 30 years ago. So I'm running this big project there. And at one point, it was a bunch of consultants from Coopers. And eventually, though, it just ended up to be me. And I'm running this big project. There was like a $20 million telecom project, which, you know, at the time was a big deal. And this is when we were, all this stuff's going to age me. We were literally advising them to pull a data cable to every works location, because eventually every desk might have a computer and it would make sense to have a data running to that. And so I'm there enough that I actually have an apartment in DC, apartment in New York. Georgetown's paying all this money for me to be there every month to run this project. I figured one time was $40,000 or $50,000 a month they're spending with Coopers and Lybrand. So at the time, you could still smoke in offices, and my customer there was a big guy that smoked a pipe, and I always wanted to have my own business. And I went into his office one day and I said, you know, John, there's a way for you to have Kirby run this project for you that doesn't cost you $50,000 a month. And he sat back in his chair and he puffed on his pipe and he said, hum me a few bars. And so I ended up, the universe sort of clicked into place. I was able to leave a big consulting firm, start my own consulting firm with Georgetown as my first customer, which that having one big customer has sort of stayed with me through my career of tech-enabled services and technology. Of, you know, you get that mothership customer to keep you in business while you try to grow your business. And I was an independent telecom consultant for a few years and ran this project at Georgetown, and then designed all the communication systems for the Washington Post for a couple years, which was pretty cool. It was back in the day when newspapers were a big deal, and Post was a very cool place to work. And I started to hire people, but I was just sort of stuck. And I had a business mentor of mine said that, the way if you really want to grow a business, you need partners. You need other people that are bringing, have some skin in the game, bring skill sets that you don't have. And so I ended up partnering with a guy that understood data communications and another guy that understood video communications. And so we were a consulting and integration firm, and we could go in and design and implement these networks. And we decided to focus on healthcare because I had a background in healthcare. And at the time, this was when IP networks were being created. And just a little fun fact of history there is about 1993, back in the day, if you had email, if you were a big university or health system, what email really meant was you could communicate with the other people in your institution. That's what email meant, that you could communicate with other people on different floors. And I remember we had a client, University of Memphis, because we worked with universities too. And I'm talking to the CIO of the University of Memphis. I'm standing at his desk, and he gets an email from someone at another university. And I looked, I'm like, what was that? I'm like, how did that happen? He's like explaining to me, yeah, we got this thing, the universities are connected and yada, yada, yada. But anyway, so everything in life is timing. What we were betting on at the time was that every institution, but certainly every health system, was moving from standalone networks to IP networks. And it used to be, you'd have a computer terminal at your desk and literally a cable running to one computer somewhere. And in a hospital, the operating room had their own computer system, another place. And so at the time during the 90s, really every health system in America, mainly individual hospitals, were putting in IP networks. And it's not like today and like Cisco, Cisco wasn't Cisco yet. I mean, Cisco was a company, but wasn't clear who was going to dominate this space. And, you got your router from one company, you got, all the different piece parts you got from different companies. So you needed really a systems integrator to make it all work. So we ended up, and in healthcare, hospitals just want to work with people that have done work with other hospitals. That's the main thing they care about. And so we ended up building most of the data networks for every major healthcare system from DC up to New York City. And, this is a sort of healthcare mecca, especially in Philadelphia. Philadelphia was all a lot of hospitals. And we ended up selling that to a company on the West Coast that was doing a roll up in the systems integration space. And it was two French Lebanese brothers, George and Daniel Dow. And the one thing I learned from them is, and I say this with great respect, and I thought I was a good bullshitter. Well, I went to work for these guys that had taken this company public, and it was like, man, Kirby, you're an amateur at this game and everything. But they were very dynamic guys. Stayed there for a year till I could sell my stock in Dow and left. And then I was hired to come in and create a BLEC, which was a company that the idea was you would partner with large real estate companies like that owned 1 million square feet of office space in major cities. And you'd get this special deal with them and sell to the customers in their building. Well, the one thing I learned there was never start a business that does deals with real estate guys if you're not a real estate person, because that's a whole different, hope none of you are real estate moguls, but when they tell you you have a deal, that means they're thinking about it. You might have a deal, but what was interesting there, it was the telecom explosion. I had been recruited in by a telecom VC called Columbia Capital. They actually wanted to start this company. It was their idea. They brought me in to run it. And we raised $100 million in a month. And it was like, really because it was these guys from Columbia calling their buddies at other VC firms and saying, we're going to do this. Well, that space, which we were lured in, I was listening to Sid, by other people that had raised a lot of money. One company had even gone public, even though there was some doubts as to, like, in my mind, the business never quite made sense, but you know, like, doesn't necessarily mean anything. There's a lot of smart people were doing this, but the business ultimately did not succeed. And Columbia Capital decided to repurpose the company and basically fired me. So, I mean, I was in there, and then they brought me in one day and said, we're going to do this other thing and we're going to fire you. Well, they said, we're going to fire you, but I think you could move on. And so I joined a company called Viewgate in England. They are the software developers in England. And the idea there was to have telecom software that helped people manage their VPNs, actually helped telecom companies. And this is the time all of a sudden there was 1,000 different telecom companies competing against the big telecom companies. There was startups all over the country. And you know, what happened there is, I tell people, well, all the companies we were selling to went out of business in the telecom implosion, and our software never quite worked. So other than that, it was a good, but at the time telecom was still a big thing. We had raised $20 million from British VCs. And the main interesting note from that experience was I was in England on 9/11. So I used to think it was a strange place to be on 9/11. I've come to realize wherever you were on 9/11 was a strange place to be, but I, you know, couldn't get back here for a week. And I remember my 7-year-old son saying, well, Daddy, I hope they don't blow up your plane on the way home. And I'm telling him, don't worry, but I'm thinking, I hope they don't blow up my plane on the way home, you know, to get back here. After that, you know, sometimes it's better to be lucky than good. I had got back with the guys that I had built the original company in healthcare, one of them that was successful. And we bought out the division of a company that provided secure IP communications via satellite. And you didn't used to be able to do that because all the communication satellites are 22,000 miles up and takes 500 milliseconds to get up and down, and IP networks don't like delay, yada, yada, yada. Anyway, this company had figured out a technology that enabled you to cost effectively do that. The telecom industry was in a total implosion, and we were able to buy the services division of this company that made this technology. And basically what we bought was time on 2 commercial satellites and space in 2 commercial teleports that gave us coverage of parts of West Africa and parts of the Middle East. And the original idea was to be an ISP in third world countries, which was a very good humanitarian idea, a horrible business idea. But we had one military, US military customer on that network we bought, US Army Corps of Engineers. And I said when we started this, well, why don't I take this military stuff? You never know what might happen here. And it turned out that we had great coverage of Iraq in our network. And I was actually introduced to these guys, and I say guys, in all these, it's men and women. I was introduced to these men and women at the Army's Space and Missile Defense Battle Lab in Colorado Springs, whose job was to determine space-based assets to help the US military warfighters. And basically these folks just told us, just do what we tell you to do and you'll be fine. So we were smart enough to do that and made it a little better. And, you know, we ended up getting coverage of Afghanistan. And what happens when a war breaks out is that the actual war fighters take up all the military satellite space and all the people that support the war fighters, the Army Logistics Command, Army Corps of Engineers, all the internet cafes. That all goes to commercial providers. It all has to be secure and all this stuff. But so we ended up being a major supplier to the U.S. Army in Iraq and Afghanistan and around the world, or the U.S. Army's version of the world. And, you know, it's a good time to be selling stuff to the U.S. military. When a war breaks out and you have something the U.S. military wants, all the normal contracting stuff goes out the window. And it's, yeah, get that. And so that company ended up being successful, sold it to Iridium, which is a bigger satellite company. And I moved down here to DC, or to Charlottesville. And what, you know, my story there maybe is more relevant to people here, which is, I was looking for the next thing to do. And when I first moved here, this was 2005, people said that Charlottesville had a great entrepreneurial community and all this stuff, and it really didn't. And one of the bizarre parts of it, at least Kirby's version of it, was the entrepreneurs that were successful here many times were sort of proud of the fact that they did it without any help from UVA. And UVA at the time was still very much Mr. Jefferson's University, and, you know, didn't want all this entrepreneur stuff, wasn't really interested in it. And, you know, I thought that was insane. That what are you talking about? You have 15,000 smart people over there. There's got to be a way to leverage what they're doing. And of course, all that has changed. UVA has changed and is all about entrepreneurial, supporting entrepreneurs. And I thought that at the time, you know, Charlottesville, there's no way you could compare Charlottesville to Silicon Valley. But what Charlottesville does have is it has a university with a lot of smart people, and it has a lot of money here. It's not necessarily entrepreneurial money. The most people here that are very wealthy did not start out as entrepreneurs. They're more hedge fund people. But, you know, I thought the money is here, and the benefit of that is you're not flying in to try to raise money. You can go to Greenberry's and have coffee and try to raise money. And eventually so in my mind, there has to be a way to tie in UVA, a lot of money in this town. And I eventually was introduced to Dr. Ruban, Karen Ruban, who's the head of telemedicine at UVA. The Affordable Care Act was coming out. Karen is, if there's a Mount Rushmore of telemedicine, Dr. Ruban would be on it. She's a national icon in the telemedicine industry. And she encouraged me to get back in the game here. I partnered with a very smart guy that had shown up here in town, gotten divorced, Harvard Business School guy that moved back to Charlottesville. And we got a job doing consulting work for the state of Virginia as part of the broadband money that had come out, and to study the convergence of electronic medical records, telemedicine systems, telehealth. And where I thought about that with Sid and Alexis was that we got to study this big space, but it was like paid market research to figure out, yeah, this thing is huge, but like, where can we make money? Like, what is it in all that we might be able to do? And we decided on remote patient monitoring for a variety of reasons. And the main reason I had a background in that telecom stuff, and the financial model was changing at Medicare. The way they paid for healthcare services was putting a lot of risk on hospitals, and to, for hospitals to be encouraged to keep patients healthy at home. So we started a company, we designed it an end-to-end remote patient monitoring service where we had actually a clinical call center and nurses, and we pitched this idea to UVA, and they said yes, and we got a 5-year contract with UVA Health System to monitor 5,000 patients a year. And UVA is sort of informal quid pro quo, got a small percentage of the company. Well, what I thought I knew something about healthcare technology. Well, what I knew was how to put in the plumbing for healthcare technology. Selling healthcare technology as part of the care delivery system is a order of magnitude about 100 times harder. And it's like, if I'd known then what I know now, I never would have started Locus, because what we do, and what we did is we shifted much more to the software. We're a software company now. And so we're a software company that enables the monitoring and care of patients at home. It enables the transformation of care. A different way of saying that is it requires the transformation of care. And what happened was a lot of momentum to care transforming, but it wasn't happening. And then when the Trump administration came in, they killed most of the incentive to help hospitals do that. But we got a super focus in order to try to grow this business, which was we focused on single ventricle programs. These are programs in children's hospitals around the country where doctors perform surgery for babies born with a single ventricle heart on the second day of their life. At 3 months, if the baby's still progressing, they go home for 3 months and then they come back in. It is literally and figuratively a tiny market, but it is the standard of care in that market. And it turns out, and so we focused on that, and we now support 28 of those programs across the country. It turns out that by definition, if you have a single ventricle program, you are a big time health system. So what we have is contracts with big time health systems across the country, but we've been fighting to stay alive, raised $10 million from local angel investors, and then COVID came and changed our world. So COVID came in. There's nothing like an actual global pandemic to help a remote care technology company. And so now we're in a position to leverage all these contracts we have across the country. We received an NIH grant in oncology. We're active in adult cardiac rehab, organ transplant, and COVID's changed our world in two major ways. Very much the environment we're selling into, but the other thing is travel. We spent an enormous amount of time and effort traveling around to all these health systems. Now we can actually pitch to them, contract with them, implement and support them, all without ever leaving my dining room table here. And so what we have is a cloud-based platform, app-enabled platform. As I tell people, we have an app the way Uber has an app. I mean, it gives us too much credit, but it's the app is connected to our platform. Platform's connected to electronic medical system. We're inside the tent, and that was a lot in a little bit, but yeah, I'm glad to be here and see all you guys.
Thank you so much, Kirby. I really appreciate, I know we appreciate you sharing that pathway, that journey. I would love to open it up for Q&A. Does anyone have any questions for Kirby? Yeah, JD, you can start us off.
So you said you hyper-focused in the beginning. So do you think the hyper-focus helped you continue a somewhat small business up to the point of your big break? I guess it's
yeah. You mean with Locus?
Yeah, with Locus.
Yeah. Yes, especially because this technology is still bought on a patient population by patient population basis for the moment anyway. So the way to, at the beginning of Locus, when we were pitching to a room full of people in a health system, a big conference room, we thought, this is awesome. We're pitching to this big group of people. We now realize that is a complete waste of time. That we literally we're pitching to 15 senior executives at Stanford tomorrow. We have a great relationship with Apple. Apple's brought us in to pitch, and I mean, look, it's fun, it's cool. I'm glad that Apple brought us in. Apple did a video about us, by the way, which was pretty cool. But in my mind, this is I mean, other than it's always good to have exposure, but as far as getting a deal, pitching to 15 executives in a health system, there is no deal happening there. So the focus was good.
And then, did you have a plan to transition before COVID ever, or were you just going to stay hyper focused and then you were like,
No. Yeah, that's a great question. So our software has been designed from the beginning. It's enterprise software to support any patient population. I mean, we've been betting. I mean, the other thing I've tried to do, or I've been lucky to do, is, I'm trying to figure out where the wave is and how to put my surfboard up on the wave. For a while in healthcare, I was thinking, hey, I didn't come here to create the wave. I have to, but yes, the idea was always to use that as a foot in the door, but it's enterprise software, and then to be able to grow.
Sorry, just to quickly follow up. So once you got in the door, then you would hope that the organization would enjoy Locus enough that they would just bring you on in a further.
Yes, and
Okay.
to put a little more color on that, when you're selling to a big healthcare system, from the time that the person you're selling to says yes, if you've never done business with them before, from the time they say yes to the time you get a contract is 6 to 9 months, because you have to get through contracting, and in our world, you have to get through IT security review because we're holding patient information, and so the cool thing is, once we're in there, well, now we have a contract that you can just add another statement of work to. We've made it through the IT. We're operating behind their firewall. We're much easier to do business with once we're in there.
Hey, Kirby, just a real quick question. Your focus seems to be on hospital systems right now. Have you thought about working with like pharma companies for their remote monitoring for testing drugs?
Yeah. So we absolutely have thought about it. I think we have a great solution to support clinical trials. It's just not something, on the focus. It's not something we know anything. We just don't know people in that industry. And the only little more, like, maybe you probably know something about pharmaceuticals, right? There's companies that do all the testing.
Right.
But it is, the exciting thing for us, there's a lot of like aging in place, there's a lot of applications for our platform. And if that's something you know something about, I'd love to talk to you, because absolutely that would be great. And that's where, we want to be where the money is.
I do know somebody here locally that puts on the clinical trials for all companies. So I'll be glad to set you up with Sarah.
Yeah, that'd be great. Thank you.
Nice. Who else has questions for Kirby?
Kirby, I had a quick question about your early consulting experience. Asking for a friend. It seems to me like you got your kind of big break by figuring out how to do what Cooper's Librarian was doing more efficiently yourself. Did you, as you built your own company, did you run into the same problem? Did you have any consultants thinking they could run it more efficiently than you? And if so, or even if not, how does one guard against that, or is that even possible?
Yeah, well, you get non-disclosed. I mean, you get non-compete agreements, but those, of course, to be enforceable, have to be pretty narrow. I think that's where getting partners that were joined at the hip with you, was my problem for a while, that I was hiring consultants versus having partners that brought another. The downside of that, of course, is that's like getting married, and I've had at least one business divorce. And I don't know if it's,
Mhm.
I've never gotten marriage divorce, but business divorce is no fun. This really isn't the question you asked, but the other thing though I did was what led to us getting more than one, getting partners in this company was I started teaming with other sort of solo consulting firms, and we would come together and work on projects. And then I guess the last thing I would say is, I've tried to focus, well, with my consulting is having, 2 or 3 big customers.
Mhm.
And we were small enough that I maintained the relationship. I was still the relationship guy with those places. So it was, would have been a little more difficult for someone to Coopers and Lybrand me if we, by the way, Coopers and Lybrand did so much business with Georgetown that, they didn't care.
Yeah, yeah.
You're good, pal. Go ahead.
Thank you.
Yep.
Awesome. Anyone else? We probably have time for one more question if anyone has another one. Anybody? Awesome. Well, Kirby, we again appreciate you taking the time this morning and coming in and sharing. And much success for Locus. It sounds pretty exciting where you guys are going. And just, it sounds like endless opportunities and directions you can go.